All right, here he is, the great Scott Horton, back again. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. How are you, Tommy?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Like you were saying,
How's the
just
old lady?
tired. She's doing good. She's on the phone. She's working right now. So
Okay.
some of these days, some weekdays, she's like I guess Monday through Wednesday, she usually works from about 7 in the morning to about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
She's usually going pretty long for the first
I
part of
know
the week.
Texas
And
is big, and this is really, it's probably as far from you as it is from me, but are you going to the Ron Paul birthday thing on the
I'm
ninth?
not. I'm not. I didn't find out about it until after I'd already made plans to go to New Orleans, and
Oh, okay.
I spent more money in New Orleans than I should have.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
I got
hoping maybe I could see y'all there. It's been a little while.
yeah, we got to make a trip up to Austin. So
Yeah.
we're gonna have to do that soon, probably in the
I'll
next
feed
year
you
or so.
barbecue. You know that I will.
I know you will. I know. And it's great barbecue too. But I know in a couple of years, 2027, we're planning a trip to Cape Town. So we're gonna
Oh,
have to get to you before then.
all
So
right. I'm
sometime
really
probably
just up the road a piece, man. You just got to figure it out.
yeah, it's
Leash that
really
dog to something.
yeah, really that's the issue is figuring out what to do with the dogs. Like,
Yeah.
and I can probably, if I can find a weekend where my son's not working, and I know he's listening, but if I can find a weekend where he's not working and he could come down and stay with the dogs for a weekend, I could make it work.
Yeah.
But that's all it is. It's just figuring out somebody to babysit these monsters.
I know how it goes, man. I got only one now. My other one died, but same
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. It is.
Yep.
But I heard Obama's going to prison.
Wouldn't that be awesome? No, there's not a rule of law that can touch people that influential or whoever got to that high of a rank.
All right. Yeah,
Um,
that's kind of what I thought too.
and like if we just start putting presidents in prison, that would make me feel good, but also it wouldn't be us putting them in prison. It would be them putting each other in prison. It would
Right.
lead to a lot of real problems. So,
Yeah.
I had one idea about all this Russiagate stuff, which who knows? Maybe I'm copying something Just Ramondo said a long time ago and I don't remember anymore or something that happens. I thought I made up the Bin Ladenites because it's like a political designation more than a religious one. People get all that confused, but no, of course that comes from Justin. But anyway, I was thinking that what they could do is like a truth and reconciliation commission type of a thing, or even like a cheaper version of that would be let the Justice Department let them do serious as full throttle, no fooling grand jury investigations into
Hmm.
all of these people and all the crimes they committed to inflict Russiagate on us, statute of limitations or not, and write up the whole damn thing in going after their ass indictment form, and then just release those to the public
Mm.
and say, maybe some of the lower guys you could get. You don't want to go after actual Clintons and Obamas because then it's just going to drive everything into whatever. I mean, I'd like to see the worst thing in the world happen to John Brennan for all of his treasons. It's hard
Mm.
to keep track of them all, this guy. Him and James Clapper both
Yeah.
just, ugh. But what are you going to do? Like, really, like, literally speak, like, what are you going to do? But there should be something, right? It's got to be something. So how about like real indictments and real exposure of everything that these people did? And if, they end up getting implicated in lower financial crimes in their states as the result or whatever, then fine. Let the actual rule of law take it from there. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure
Right.
there's plenty of that. Like to have Trump's Justice Department just persecute these people. I mean, man, believe me, I'm only pretending to be this like mature and wise on your show right now. I mean, the reality is, I'd like to see these people strung up and their families all banished from the United States forever, all their property confiscated and
Hmm.
salted over. Launch them into space like Superman 4, launch them into the sun. I hate these people, dude. I got such a chip on my shoulder over Russiagate, especially. I can't stand it, dude. It's like the Waco mask or something. And I'm not even like all because I'm so loyal to Trump. It's not that. It's just, I like truth and I just can't stand being lied to like that. It just drives me insane. And what they got away with doing to him. Imagine, and this is the same for anybody. Imagine you're elected, you win. You beat a Bush and a Clinton in 1 year and you become the president of the United States. And then the government just says, nope, you're not the president of nothing. Right?
Hmm.
Like when the Muslim Brotherhood won the presidency in Egypt, and the government was like, "Oh yeah, not the president of me," and he wasn't able to do anything. Right? It was the same
Right.
thing. They refused to accept his authority over them. I'm like, no, I'm sorry, you have no right to deny this guy. He may be the worst SOB, but he's the one who stood for election and won, not anyone else in the entire executive branch. He's the only one who stood
Hmm.
for election. And so
I think Aaron Mate did a really good job on Megyn Kelly yesterday, like driving
I
that
hadn't seen
point
that yet.
home.
I have it in a tab open here.
You got to
I
watch
interviewed
it.
him though. I got one. I got one of them from the other day too.
Yeah, I listened to that today.
Yep.
But
Oh, okay.
but what I was going to say is he did a really good job understanding Megyn Kelly's audience
Uh-huh.
and in drilling home the point like, look, I'm left wing. I don't like Trump. But they did this like they overthrew the democratically elected president for the most part. They took away his entire first term from
Yep.
the people that voted for him, and then they convinced the people that voted for him that they were malleable Russian agents, that they were, you know, just um, just useful idiots on behalf of Russia. And I remember like, and I haven't heard anybody bring this up, including Tucker, but I remember Adam Schiff defending the entire Russiagate narrative and going on Tucker's show and calling Tucker a Russian agent to his face. And Tucker just started laughing. He's like, "Me? Really?" You know, and it was just kind of like they were just
That's what
so
somebody said to me
brazen.
today. I was on the Pierce Morgan show today, and this British journalist John Sweeney said, "Oh yeah, you're just Russia's useful idiot." Or whatever. Bitch, please.
Yeah.
You can't fade these facts. You got nothing on me, dude. What do you got?
Yeah.
You know, it's ridiculous.
Well, and it seems
People
like
don't say that anymore. Fade. Sorry for the 1990s verb there.
I know what you're talking about. It
You
seems like
don't have to front on me. No.
it seems like all the same people are sticking with the exact same freaking um line of propaganda. Like you look at like Pod Save America, Joe Scarborough, all these guys, they're still saying, no, it was proven Marco Rubio led the House Intelligence Committee
Which is true.
investigation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
it's
yeah, but Marco
indict him
Rubio is
too.
Marco Rubio, dude. And
Indict
what did
him
that report
too.
say? That report said, you know what? It's all true, but it's not true because of Papadopoulos or Page or Flynn or Sessions or any of these things. No, it's because Manafort gave polling data to Kalimnik. When
Which
one,
which was
Kalimnik
perfect,
was their guy.
and it was public polling data.
And yeah, and he didn't even give it to Kalimnik. He gave it to Deripaska. And Deripaska was their friend who they asked to investigate Trump for them.
So, all
So
right,
they got nothing. They got
some people might
nothing.
not. Some people may be listening to us rant, and we know what we're talking about, and they're
Sorry.
like, "Wait,
Yeah.
what are y'all going on about?" Break it down.
Okay.
What we have found with Tulsi Gabbard's releases in the last couple of weeks.
Okay. Well, so that's skipping way ahead of the thing. What came out brand new is that when they put together the intelligence community assessment, which is not a national intelligence estimate, it was a hand-picked group of John Brennan stooges who did it. They put this thing out in January of 2017, right before Trump was inaugurated, like I believe 7 days before, on the 13th, saying that the Russians intervened in the election and they did so with a clear preference for Trump and to try to get him elected and put him in power. Or at least, that was the heavily inferred thing, was that they intervened and they wanted Trump to win. And then, well, he did win. And so that must have been what made the difference, was, what a lot of people heard. And the thing
Mm.
is, it was completely a joke. And so, but what we heard what we learned, and we already knew that they relied on the Steele dossier that the FBI and CIA had both already completely dismissed as fake, months before.
Mm-hmm.
And we already knew that. But then they released that on top of that, there were these other strands of information that John Brennan insisted that they use, even after they didn't want the analysts didn't want to use these things. Like, this is nonsense. And he was like, I like it. I insist that we use it anyway. And it was like, there was an email and they didn't know where it came from or who it was sent to or what its origin was or what it meant or what it was. Okay. Then there was another message that was somebody saying something about the inevitability of Trump's win. And it said 5 different analysts read it 5 different ways, including that they were saying it was inevitable that he would win the primary because this conversation was before the primary.
Mm.
When, of course, it was obviously inevitable that he was going to win the primary. Who's going to stop him? Ted Cruz? Of course, he's going to win the primary. It's inevitable. You could have said that in 2015. I said that as soon as I said that in 2015 in the late summer of 15 when I heard Scott Adams say, oh, he's the alpha dog. He can pull the pants down and push down any dork on this stage, and none of them can stand up to him. He's the biggest bully. He's got the best insults, and they can't. And I was like, this is true. This is true, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, Jeb Bush is a big, soft dork, and after him is all wimps. Sorry, but Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, John Kasich. Of course, it was inevitable. Any Russian or other analyst could have told you that. So,
Mm.
also not meaningful at all. And then, was there one more thing? I think there was one more thing, but it was another little meaningless strand. And then we also found out that they had a bunch of contrary information, such as a source who actually did know Putin and who said that Putin says that he doesn't care who wins because both party establishments and the entire American establishment hates Russia and they're going to deal with Russia the same no matter what. And that he thinks he can handle them both because he's so good at what he does. And so he's not worried about it either way. Was the way. And then, but they ignored that and deleted that and that. Then you had where even
Well,
there were
let me
CIA
ask you about
analysts who objected and
that.
they were removed and not even allowed to participate in the study because they were the ones who had previously debunked the information. So they cherry picked or hand picked the analysts so that they could hand pick the result that they were going to get.
Let me ask you about the Putin thing for a minute because I kind of keep track of like what Tim Pool is putting out there just because I know a lot of people listen to him.
Sure, that's interesting.
And one of the things that
I should watch him more, honestly.
I try to watch him at least once or twice a day. Like some of his stuff I just can't get into, but some of it I'm like, oh, okay, he's actually talking about something I'm interested in. But he's been covering a lot of this stuff. And one of the disclosures he said that came out was that Putin had originally said, yes, I don't really care who wins because neither of these people are on my side. And then they ended up spreading the rumor that Putin had compromise on Trump, which was supposed to be the Steele dossier. And come to find out, he had compromise on Hillary Clinton about her health and having
Mm-hmm.
to take tranquilizers in order to keep her mood in check because she was so out of control.
Mm-hmm. And then
So
apparently, yeah,
so
that they
there's
had
this
gotten
kind
that
of like
from.
there's kind of this assumption that Putin thought by having this compromise on Hillary Clinton, maybe it would be better that she win for his benefit because he could then hold that against her.
Mm. Well, and we also know from the Durham report that, and from the Inspector General, the Department of Justice Inspector General report, that they had real suspicion that the source for the Steele dossier, the primary source, Danchenko, that he was a Russian spy. And the FBI had investigated him before. And the only reason they dropped is because they mistakenly thought he'd left the country already, they said. But
Mm-hmm.
that they thought that he might have been a Russian spy and that some of the stuff that he was getting from any Russian sources may have been deliberately fed to him in order to bolster the narrative in the Steele dossier. In other words, to hurt Trump, to help her. This is one of the things that they suppressed was that and this is what Ray McGovern told me, and he wasn't right about everything, but he was certainly right about every aspect of Russiagate. And he had been the former chief of the CIA's Soviet analysts
Mm-hmm.
in the old days. And he told me, he goes, listen, man, I can guarantee you about the Russians. They prefer stability. Hillary Clinton is tried and true, and they know exactly how to deal with her. Donald Trump has never been in power before. He's a businessman and a TV star, and he's obviously doesn't read and is only somewhat interested and is very mercurial and can get very easily offended. And, is the kind of guy who you can't really count on him other than to know that overall the national government of the United States is going to get what it wants, and he'll only be so powerful anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But all other things being equal, they would prefer Bill Clinton's wife because then they knew exactly what they're dealing with, whether
Mm-hmm.
they have blackmail on her or not, or whether they would even let her know, ooh, we're going to tell everybody that you're taking medicine, like whatever. You know what I mean? Like they wouldn't even, that could embarrass her in the campaign. They couldn't really blackmail her with that or like push her around with that. You know what I mean?
Right.
They could release it just to hurt her if they wanted to, and they didn't, I think is the point there.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than, this amounts to like blackmail material that like, oh, somebody else says she has emotional problems. Like that's not a health diagnosis other than like, I guess if you show she was on like heavy doses of lithium or something, that would be something, but you know what I mean? Otherwise, no.
Yeah, I keep thinking about. I don't know if you remember. There was that. There was a one video that went viral where she was like at the DNC and they're standing on the stage and they drop all the balloons and she looks like she gets lost. She's
Yeah.
like looking up and it was just kind of like this weird image. And then there was
I
that
always thought
time
that
that
was her
she
just faking. Oh, I'm so excited. But she's just has no emotions like that. So that was the best she could do it,
so
pretending to
she
be
had to
like
turn
so
it on.
happy or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And then there was that time she fell like trying to get in the limo,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
you know. So
And the
everybody
coughing
knew.
fits too. I read that the coughing fits, that's a side effect of certain medicines. I can't remember which they said, but
Hmm,
that
okay.
made sense. It wasn't bronchitis. It was like this weird kind of dry cough that she had where it was interrupting all her speeches and all this stuff.
Right. Yeah, I do remember that. So, I mean, I think we all kind of had this idea. She's getting older, obviously, and we knew this, but it wasn't something like with Biden where it was so obvious. It was just like right in your face, right? And
Right.
and you have to have three books come out to inform you that Biden had dementia because it's not like we could
After the
see
fact.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Seriously. Um, yeah, that's true. And she still dyes her hair a little bit blonde, so it's
Mm,
not like completely gray and whatever, but there definitely was an aspect of that. And this is a big propaganda campaign against her that summer was about her health problems,
right.
which was smart politics. Like she's not up for this. She's over the hill. Oh, Donald Trump, he's strong. He can do it. You know what I mean?
Mm,
That like, yeah,
yeah.
that was a big deal. That was part of the narrative. And so yeah, I think in other words, the moral of that story is this is the dog that didn't bark, right? This is the thing that didn't happen that sort of reveals in the background. Here, Putin had according to the CIA, they appeared to know that Putin had this information on her, but he didn't use it when
Hmm.
he could have. He could have handed it right to Don Jr. Said, hey, guess what pills Hillary's taking? Because if she doesn't, she'll start singing and screaming and
Mm,
or whatever. That's what they were
right.
claiming. She was
Yeah.
having these emotional fits of happiness and rage that they weren't sure how to deal with. So they had her on these massive tranquilizers to try to keep her mellow, but then that was making her slow and screwing her up and whatever. So, um, but look, here's the deal with the Russiagate, man. Is the simpler story is the Clintons started it. I think that John Brennan started it. I think that
Mm,
it began. My best information about this is really from one of the things from a statement he made on Frontline, but also there's great reporting from Matt Taibbi based on the House investigation, the classified House investigation, which is part of what Tulsi's leaking now. Um, they say that any minute now, Chuck Grassley is supposed to post the secret annex, the classified annex to the Durham report, which was the special investigation into the investigation in the
And
origin.
they apparently found that in burn bags
That's
in
right.
some like side room. And
Hmm.
Cash, I
No
remember
other copy.
Cash Patel has been saying that he's been finding like files all over the place in rooms they're not supposed to be stored in. And apparently he found like thousands of files like put in these burn bags that were set aside in this room. And they started looking through it and they found the annex of the Durham investigation in there.
Hmm. I can't wait to see that. I mean, the Durham investigation itself, you could see how limited it was. He was not allowed to cross or interrogate James Comey, or there are lots of things that he was not allowed to do, and he clearly was shut down before he was done. He prosecuted two guys who got away with it, but they were both guilty as hell as part of the conspiracy to do this thing. So there's so much there. And depending on how much time we want and how far you want to go into that, I can talk all about what the
Go for it.
from the family tree of Clinton to her people and wherever. But if you rewind back, Matt Taibbi says at the end of 2015 that um, that was when John Brennan, the director of the CIA, asked the Five Eyes, that is the Anglophone countries, to work to see if they could bump into Trump campaign people and see if they could get something on them or find
Mhm.
out something, along these lines. Now, I'm not certain of this, but it seems like this is the most likely explanation for the setting up of George Papadopoulos, where you have a guy who clearly is not a Russian agent at all. He's an MI6, asset, if not, officer, but he's like their guy, a professor, and who travels around doing fancy pants panel discussions at fancy places with intelligence and police officials and foreign policy, foreign ministers and this kind of thing. And he meets Papadopoulos, and maybe I don't even know how much there really is to this. I go through a lot of different permutations of the different claims and evidence in the book and try to explain, but I think there's a pretty good possibility that he was saying something to Papadopoulos that he was trying to get Papadopoulos to hopefully repeat to somebody else. And then they sent that somebody else would have been the Australian ambassador Downer to then also meet with Papadopoulos and say, "Hey, you heard anything about the secret thing with the emails and the thing, or Russian dirt on Hillary?" And try to get Papadopoulos to say something on the other side, right? Garbage in, garbage out, with him as the
Right.
unknowing receptacle here, right? Um, and I think that didn't really work right. Like the only conversation they had was Hillary Clinton's missing emails, where everybody knew the FBI was investigating her emails. She had a secret server at her house and at a separate one at a private company in her hometown somewhere, wherever in New York, where um, she had deleted them all. And these were in regards to her job as Secretary of State and working at the Clinton Foundation and all of that stuff. And so there was no hint in the media or anywhere else or in anything Papadopoulos said,
Hmm.
or probably that Mifsud said, because he wouldn't have known anything about Mifsud. Nothing that he said to Papadopoulos about, oh, the Russians have hacked the DNC and they're leaking that. All that, it was, they seemed to use that as an excuse after the fact, where the Australian ambassador late in July came and said, "Oh, I had a meeting with this guy and he did say this thing to me that I think may have." Although he later denied that and said that he said, "Oh, that maybe the Russians had some information, but it didn't say anything about email." So like everybody told different versions of this story, and there's a lot of contradiction in it. But I think there's enough to at least strongly suspect that this, which happened in March of 16, um, began in March of 16, that that was orchestrated by the feds in the first place, by the CIA and the FBI working together in the first place, or the FBI may have come later. Um,
Well, that's what I was just
because
looking for.
and see the FBI. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was saying I was just looking because I remember, and maybe you know more about this than I do, but I remember when Dan Bongino was writing his book on Russiagate, he had John Solomon on his podcast, and John Solomon had said that this entire plot was originally cooked up to be used against John McCain. And when they approached John McCain with it, John McCain kind of laughed at him because he understood how the the bureaucracy worked And he was like, there's no way this is going to work against me. And then he got on board with the same people, with Brennan and Clapper, to utilize it against Trump. But for some reason, I remember a story coming out written by John Solomon saying that this was first attempted to be used against McCain when he was running against Obama.
I'd have to read that. That doesn't sound right because McCain is such a Russia hawk and always has been. He hates Putin. He's the kind of guy
I'd
who,
have to
let
go
me
back
tell
and
you about
find it.
Putin, you know?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and find it, but I clearly remember something like
Yeah,
that being talked about by
I'd have to
John
look at
Solomon
that.
and Dan Bongino.
And Solomon is extremely reliable on this stuff, man. I mean, they claimed to catch him on something one time, and I don't even think that they were right. And then, but he had so many scoops on this,
Yeah.
such as exactly what you would have guessed is exactly what happened according to Solomon. The FBI put up a spreadsheet and said, here's all the Steele dossier claims. Here's everything in there that we can verify is true. Oh, and here's the source where you could have read this from any, in public, from public
Hmm.
sources before he wrote it.
Yeah.
And then here's everything we can't verify. And we have no information whatsoever indicating any of the rest of these rumors are true. And we see none of that was reported anywhere. So you see, all that happened was he goes, oh, Carter Page went to Russia. And then he makes up a bunch of stuff about what must have happened there while he was there and pretends
Right.
he has a source who knows this, but it's fake. Right. And so that was how it was. And so they go, major parts of the dossier have been confirmed. No, not anything actually that's an accusation against somebody. Right. If the Steele dossier says that Trump has a lawyer named Cohen, that part's verified. That Cohen went to Prague to make a secret deal with the Ruskies about this and that? No, he never been to Prague in his life, and that's not verified at all, right?
Right.
So, and I don't even know. They should have at least had a kernel of truth there. They're like, somebody saw him get on a plane to somewhere. I don't know what they were doing with that, but they would always try to justify it that way. But that's an example of Solomon's great reporting where he goes, listen, the FBI showed that they just did their job. Probably took them a day. If it's like, actually, Jenkins, see if you can verify this thing. And like, okay, job one, take all the claims, put them in a spreadsheet, see what holds up, try to figure out where he got this from. And then like, nah, boss, this is a bunch of crap, right? By quitting
Right.
time. Give me a break, He knows what he's doing. He's got familiarity with his beat. They said the Washington Post called their sources in Russia and asked them what they thought of the allegations of Carter Page's meeting with these powerful Russian officials to be cut in onto this huge oil deal where he's going to make $700 million. And they said it was, quote, expletive in brackets because they couldn't print it. And then the other quote was impossible.
Right.
Impossible. Give me a break, dude. No, what happened was Tommy Salmons went to Washington. And we believe he met with the deputy national security advisor and made $100 million deal while he was there. Well, Tommy may have traveled to Virginia, but the rest of your story is not true. Give me a break, dude. That was how it was. But anyway, so I think it started with Brennan and the setting up of Papadopoulos. I mean, see, now when I interviewed Aaron Mate, he said, I think they only kind of came up with that Papadopoulos stuff after the fact. Although I should have made him clarify about that because the Downer came to the FBI ratting on Papadopoulos for what he allegedly said in July or in August. So even though the New York Times didn't debut that story until December, when we found out that the Clinton administration had paid for the Steele dossier.
Right.
And hell, that might have not come out till December 17. I think that came out December 17. And that was when they debuted the Papadopoulos story for the first time. So that was suspicious that they're going, okay, well, never mind the Steele dossier, because even if that's opposition research, we had this other thing. And then all the liberals went, oh, look, another shiny thing. Papadopoulos. I bet he's got compromat. Everyone's like, remember they were like learning Russian terms. Yep. Compromat, dude. Instead of just saying like blackmail material or whatever, you got to like use the lingo and get all in on it.
Well, and
So
I feel bad for that guy. I mean, his entire him and Carter Page, those two guys' entire careers going forward are just ruined.
yeah, basically. And you know what's funny? Was the only actual violation of anybody in there that was actually a worry about them being an agent of a foreign power was they looked at Papadopoulos for working with Douglas Feith at the Hudson Institute.
Mm,
Douglas Feith, who signed the clean break and who ran the
hmm
Office of Special Plans for Paul Wolfowitz in as Deputy Secretary of Defense for Policy in the W. Bush years, lying us into war with Iraq. And his his law partner Mark Zell, of course, was a lawyer who represented settlers on the West Bank.
Oh, geez.
And so uh Papadopoulos working with him was the closest he got to being in trouble. Working with W.
That's
Bush's guy. None of
that's
this
why.
Russia
Was
crap.
it Papadopoulos that was like framed by the Australian intelligence agent?
Yeah,
Or
or he was framed by a Brit. And then, like I say, the garbage in, garbage out. It was the Brit that tried to set him up, and the Australian who claimed that he got the garbage out on the other side.
right.
Right.
Okay. So
Who was
it was Carter Page that actually was an asset for the CIA, and the
correct.
FBI attorney lied about it, right?
Yes. So Carter
Yeah.
Page was in the Steele dossier. Now he was a oil company advisor type, so he's over there trying to make some deals. But he was a loyal CIA asset, and whenever he would go to Russia and meet any powerful businessmen or politicians, he would always come back and debrief the CIA and tell them everything about
Hmm.
it. What is he, suicidal? I mean, what was he going to do? Right? He's not a spy.
Right.
Um, and so Steele came up with this ridiculous story. And I remember reading this and being like, wait a minute, dude. Like, this is silly. Like, this can't be right. And then right after that, I saw Matt Taibbi publish a thing going, this is silly. This can't be right. That they said that they were going to do some deal in Russia where one group of Russians was going to, it was like a state owned oil company, Rosneft, this massive oil firm, that they're going to transfer it to
Weren't
private
they going to give him
ownership.
like a quarter? Wasn't he getting like a quarter of the company or something like that? It was
He
some
was,
insane.
he was supposed to get a 17% commission on the sale or whatever the giant commission on the sale, but that was going to be equivalent, however it worked out. It was supposed to be equivalent. And I forget now because I think I had two different sources on this. I think one of them said he was supposed to get $100 million, and the other said, according to this, he was supposed to get $714 million, right? And then
Mm,
this is all a bribe so that when he gets home, he will seize control of America's Congress and executive branch and sanctions policy and lift all sanctions on Russia for them. When he just got here and he's a nobody foreign policy advisor to Trump. And if they had left him alone, all other things being equal, he would have been on the National Security Council, right? He
mm.
would have been maybe the deputy or undersecretary of state, deputy secretary of state, something like that. But he wasn't going to be in charge. You're going to make him the national security advisor and force Trump somehow to lift all Russia sanctions. And
Yeah.
oh yeah, no, Lindsey Graham is going to just be fine with that and won't have a thing to do about it either. Like, no, that's not how our system works, dude. Where Carter Page can come and seize control and lift all the sanctions on Russia. If you just bribe him with $700 million, I'm sure no one will know that now he has $700 million and wonder where he got it from. Or any of the, like, you see what I mean? It was ridiculous. It was
Yeah, it
garbage.
was an insane. I remember it was an insane amount of money, and it was an insane percentage of the company that was getting transferred to him. And it
Yeah.
was like everybody was looking at it, going, "What? This makes no sense.
Well, and they're
Like
saying
none of
about
this
Trump
makes
that
any."
they're saying there's a 5 year plan that Trump has been working with the Russians and vice versa for 5 years on this plan to install him as president, with the
Mm,
entire goal being to destroy the liberal rules based international order in favor of Russian nationalism and great power competition. So you see how this is just tailor made. It's written for Democrats to read and go, oh
right.
no, Um, and
and,
so,
and it's written for us to go, yes, finally.
yeah, right. He's going to destroy the UN and bring all our troops home and abolish NATO. Hell yeah. I'm signing back up for the Bird Society, man. Um, but yeah, and then they said that in that Steele dossier, they said that what was I gonna just say just now? There's a whole giant pile of lies in there. Um, but let me step back one step. So on April the 1st, maybe I'll think of what I was going to say later if I catch back up to it. On April the 1st, fittingly, Hillary Clinton's campaign hired a law firm called Perkins Coie or Coie, I guess it's
Mm-hmm.
Coie, but Taibbi said they call it Coie if you ask them. So anyway, this law firm then became the epicenter of the plot in a lot of ways
And
because
they
they
just lost a lot of money when USAID got shut down because they were getting a lot of money from USAID.
I wonder what all for. Dirty tricks like this in other countries, right?
Yes,
Treating us,
sir.
treating us the same way as they do, like when they're doing a color coded revolution somewhere, basically.
Yep.
Um, so what they did was they hired the computer security firm that pinned the or firms, I should say, that pinned the DNC hack and leaked to WikiLeaks on Russia and
Hmm.
claimed that the Russian GRU did it, that they're this group called Fancy Bear, and Fancy Bear did it, and that's how we know. And they're Gucci for two, and Gucci for two did it, and that's how we know. And that came from CrowdStrike and from the Georgia Tech team that was led by a guy named Rodney Jaffe and some guys that work for him down at Georgia Tech University and had this program going on where they were working with DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, that and they were working together on um, attribution of the hack. And I guess separately, I'm not sure if Jaffe was in on that part. I think I read a thing that said Jaffe wasn't in on that part, but they had these separate plots, which were some of which you've heard of a lot about and some not, like the
This is
alphabet.
where this is where that kid Seth Rich got murdered, right? Around this whole timeline. Is that correct?
Yes. Now,
Because he had didn't he have connections to Guccifer and they were trying to like people were trying
I
to
don't know
connect
that.
dots to him.
I don't know that at all. If there's
Okay.
real reporting about that, I don't know that. I think the connections to Rich were very tenuous, and that's probably a red herring, is my
Hmm.
feeling on that.
It
Parts
was
of
a
Washington
strange
can be
murder, but
dangerous at
yeah,
night. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, people get robbed and killed in DC sometimes. But
yeah.
and I think he was a Hillary partisan. He was not a Bernie Sanders guy who would have been all upset about her cheating or whatever. Oh, he's all like had a crisis of conscience or whatever. I think he was very much a Hillary type.
I thought I heard
Um,
that he was a DNC leaker that was leaking information
well,
to
that's a claim, but I just don't think that there's any proof of that. Is what I'm
I,
saying.
I,
You know,
I think
people
that's
interpret it that way. That oh, look, a mysterious Democratic party guy being murdered right
mhm.
when there's a mysterious leak. It must have been that Hillary had him whacked because he was the one who did the leak. You know,
What
but that wasn't really
was
right. You know, I don't
was
think
Guccifer was that guy in Australia, right?
we don't. Well, originally there was a guy named Guccifer who was, I believe, Romanian, and then
Oh,
this identity came up called Guccifer 2.0, who I really don't know who it was. Some
okay.
suspect it was John Brennan or it was, a cutout working for Hillary
Okay.
um, themselves. Although I don't really buy that. I think the Clinton Plan Intelligence even says from when the CIA was spying on the Russians, spying on Hillary,
Hmm.
and they said the plan is to pin the leak on the Russians and say that it was to help Trump in order to distract from the embarrassment of her email scandal of
Gotcha.
the posting work. Because look, you had two major party officials, Debbie Wasserman Schultz and what's her name, had to resign over this, and they were really embarrassed for the way they had rigged the thing against Bernie Sanders. That really cost them a lot of their left wing base that might
Yeah,
have
it
turned
did.
out to vote for Hillary, who were like,
Hmm.
"No way, you guys cheated Bernie, so I'm staying home," and all that. So it was if they did that as a self-inflicted wound, false flag thing in order to cry Russia, boy, that's a pretty deep cut. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like when a lady fakes an attack, it's always like minor little defensive wounds or whatever. You know what I mean? That's not what a real defensive wound looks like from a knife. Um, so you're gonna cut yourself that deep, boy, it better be worth it. And in this case, if it was, I really don't think that. I think we just don't know who did it. I talked with um Craig Murray. He was a former British ambassador to Uzbekistan who ratted on Islam Karimov for boiling his enemies alive and all this stuff and
Hmm.
criticized America and Britain for backing him and got in trouble. And he's a friend of Assange. He's got a blog that I used to read, but I just lost track of, but it's a good blog and he's a good dude. And by the way, if you ever read this story about him in the Daily Mail, they embellish it and get it all wrong. What's right is what he told me on my show, which was he did not say that Seth Rich did it. And it's my fault that I should have followed up and said, can you confirm or deny that it was this dude? He did not. We did not talk about that. And I bet we might even be able to prove right there with the dates, depending on when he was murdered exactly. But um, he said, look, I was in Washington and I went to the woods and I met the leaker and I know who the leaker is. And I'm telling you, the leaker of the DNC
I
hack.
remember. Okay, I remember this interview. Yes.
Yeah. And he goes, this was not a Russian. And it was not anyone cut out by the Russians, working for the Russians by any degrees of separation. I know who it was, and I'm telling you. And then he heavily implied that the Podesta leak was a separate source and that the Podesta leak, well, I think he said that, but he heavily implied that it was an NSA officer who was resentful against Hillary Clinton for her misuse of secrecy and her sloppy things. When people go to real prison for accidentally leaving a laptop at home or whatever kind of
Mm,
thing, and then but she gets to get away with this bloody murder and treat their secrets like nothing. And he
right.
heavily implied that that was the motive of the second leaker there. And I don't know that's true, but it's more plausible than yeah, crap I heard these people shoveling, which was obviously, outcome determined first. Try to come up with a story of why this is true. And they claim that, oh, the server, and he left behind all these Cyrillic letters in there and a reference to Iron Felix, the founder of the NKVD. Like when American CIA officers break into Russian computers, they like to leave a bunch of English letters and references to J. Edgar Hoover behind.
Right.
Why would
Well,
they
and
do that?
and so here's where the name of the podcast Year Zero comes into play. The entire Year Zero podcast came from Vault 7, which was released by
Uh-huh.
WikiLeaks. And it was a plot by the CIA in order to not only hack into cars and take control of cars, but it was also they would leave false traces of other intelligence operations into technology so
Mhm.
it puts you on the wrong trail. So
That's
it
right. It was
pushes
called
you
Marble
off.
Cake. It
Yes.
was called Marble Cake. And
And
I
that was
remember, man,
all under the Year Zero banner. Yeah.
yeah, I remember asking you, why did you name your show after Pol Pot and the Khmer
Yeah.
Rouge? And you're like, no, 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 man. It's the WikiLeaks thing. Oh, okay. I get it.
Yeah, it was Vault 7.
Vault 7, man.
Yeah.
Um, which by the way, there's another story there where um he was willing to not leak Vault 7 and not post it if they would give him immunity and let him
I
go.
know. Yes.
And the CIA wanted to do it, but Comey messed it up and Comey leaked it to Warner. I forgot his first name. Was it John Warner or John Warner was the old guy? I think it
When
was
it
John Warner.
when it I thought it
And
was
he
I thought
ruined
it
the
was
deal.
Douglas,
He
so
leaked it.
yeah.
He leaked it. So and ruined that deal. So he would
Well,
have helped Vault 7 if they'd have
wasn't
let him
Comey
live.
trying to have him murdered?
No, that was Hillary Clinton, who at least had said, "Why don't we just drone strike him?" Although she's like mostly joking, but it was Pompeo.
Pompeo. That's right. That was
Pompeo
Pompeo.
held meetings about, well, maybe we could poison the guy, and this
Yeah.
and that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so now, so she hires this law firm, and they do the attribution of the hack and say that it was the Russians. They also are the ones who hired this Georgia Tech team to do the Alpha Bank hoax, which said that Trump has a secret server that's secretly communicating with the Russians by way of the Alpha Bank. And that's the way the FSB is using Alpha Bank as a cutout to send these secret messages back and forth. And man, Tommy, the problem with you is you're smart and right about things easily and whatever, but that's not with a lot of people. And so they were really freaked out by this, man. You know what I mean? You got to pretend to believe in the conspiracy theory for a minute. Like, oh my God, dude, Trump has a secret server communicating with the Russians where they're like telling him what to do. And he's updating them on his progress and like all of this crap. Like, oh my God, are you hearing this stuff? And well, it's all true. Like there's so much of it coming out
Oh
now.
yeah, I mean,
So if
even
you're caught up in it,
Cenk
yeah,
Uygur was going around talking about how Deutsche Bank was funneling money to Trump through this secret server and all this stuff.
yeah, dude, I'm sure he was. And which that was even the New York Times admitted that one wasn't true. Um, but so that's the atmosphere of all these things. Now, there was another one where there were Russian Yota phones, YOTA, which is a Russian brand of smartphone that supposedly it was giving off signals in proximity to Trump Tower. And then they had another thing that was just the overall DNS scam that was like trying to show DNS traffic from Russian computers to the Trump campaign and in their proximity. And we have like all their emails where they're like, they know they're bluffing. Like the people who work for this guy Jaffe at Georgia Tech, they're saying, is this enough where you could probably get away with saying that the implication is that? I mean, if you're saying that's all you need is just enough to take it to him, then like, yeah, I think you could. But then in all those cases, the CIA and the FBI immediately debunked this stuff and said that, this is manipulated data. This wasn't even created by a machine. This was created by a person and
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Like they could just tell, they know what they're doing on that level. And so they were able to debunk all that. So the Yada phones hoax and the DNS hoax, those never even got out. The FBI dismissed those so quickly. They never even became a news story. We only found out about those later. But they went with the Alpha Bank hoax, and that came from the same group, this Georgia Tech team that had participated also in the attribution of the hack. And it was a big deal. It was published by Franklin Foer in Slate, and then Dexter Filkins, to his disgrace, wrote another thing, I believe, in the New Yorker magazine about it, also claiming that it was true. And so that was another, one of the big ones there. And then it was, again, that same firm that had hired, that created the Steele dossier, essentially. They hired a group called Fusion GPS, which was run by a guy named Glenn Simpson, who was a former Wall Street Journal reporter. And he was the guy who hired Christopher Steele. And then it was Fiona Hill, the Russia expert, supposedly expert from the W. Bush and Obama years, who at that time was, or I guess early Obama, who at that time was working at the Brookings Institution. And she was the one who introduced Danchenko, or is it Danilenko? I always get these guys confused. I think it's Danchenko. One of these guys was a nano diamond scientist. I forget the other one. Anyway, doesn't matter. Danchenko is the guy. Danilenko is somebody else. And then also there's a guy named Dolan. Now, Dolan was a Democrat PR guy and an American, but he was a registered foreign agent of Russia, at least
Mm-hmm.
previously. So here's your Russian agents, right? These are the guys. You have two Russian agents are the ones, or I mean, literally speaking, I don't know whose errand they were carrying here other than the Democrats. I don't think the Russians necessarily were helping them, but there were some indications that at least some of the rumors in the Steele dossier had come from the Russians, or at least that was what the Fed said. That, wow, in other words, Russiagate in reverse. It looks like the Russians really were trying to put some of this bad stuff in the Steele dossier to help Hillary and hurt Trump
Mm-hmm.
at that time, if they were doing anything at all. And so then in the fall of 16, so this doesn't stick, right? If you go back to the summer of 16, this is all so stupid. And I interviewed a guy, Jeffrey Carr, 4 days before they even launched Crossfire Hurricane, the FBI investigation. I
Mm-hmm.
interviewed this guy, Jeffrey Carr, and he goes, man, no security expert can examine a server, tell you for certain who hacked into the thing. So there's only one group of people in the world who can tell you, and not by examining the server, but it's the National Security Agency, because by looking in their own servers, they can track essentially every packet on the planet,
Yeah, they can basically like
rewind the
turn
whole
back
internet.
time.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. They can just rewind the whole internet, see who broke in. So if somebody broke in there, then that's something else, right? Hell, even then they could probably hack into those camera feeds. But
Mm-hmm.
um, if we're just talking about someone broke in online and exfiltrated stuff over fiber optic cables or whatever, these guys got that. And Yet we have nothing but low confidence, low to moderate confidence the whole time from NSA. In other words, they were going along with the other agencies. They were not saying that we know that this is true at all, or otherwise they would have said high confidence. We know for sure what happened. It sure was the Russian military, all right. And like, no, nothing like that from them.
Mm-hmm.
So in the summer of 16, like, I'm sorry, man, but just how likely is Donald Trump to be a target of red baiting like this? You know what I mean? Like he had said, we should get along with Russia. He had said, somewhat jokingly, but I'll confess, like this was not at a rally or something. This was to only reporters in a room, and there was no punchline. It was slightly ironic. Obviously, you get the joke, but it didn't have a very good like laugh line to it. He goes,
Oh, when he
listen,
said
Russia,
Russia, if you're
if you're
listening,
listening, yeah,
yeah.
there are 30,000 emails that are listening, that are still missing. So, if you could find those for us, that'd be great. Yeah.
See,
So,
I thought that was a rally.
no, it wasn't. It
Oh,
was
what?
in a room just with some reporters. And so,
Okay.
um, the thing is, look, he was like a little serious, but so what? Like it was mostly a joke, right? That like this lady has deleted 30,000 emails. And what do you think that
Yeah.
means? She's the Secretary of State with a giant foundation sitting on tens of millions of dollars that she got from foreign donors. And all of a sudden she says, oh, these were all emails back and forth with good old hubby Bill, except Bill's on the record saying he's only sent email twice in his life on somebody else's account.
Right.
So that ain't it. And so he was making an issue of that, not necessarily making light of it. Not, you know what I mean? He was
Mm-hmm.
making an issue of that. And then he was all saying, like, hey, if somebody would come up with these, including the Russians, it wouldn't bother me. He said, I think you would be rewarded mightily by our press. That was what he said. If you do this, they will thank you for it because the press, of course, loves a good story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so let's get those emails out. Now, look, to you and me and everybody listening to this, that is what it is. And it ain't anything more than that. You know what I mean? But if you're a liberal Democrat and you're already on some Carter Page thing and you're already on the Alpha Bank deal, and the New York Times are saying, well, the Russians definitely are intervening and did the leak to WikiLeaks and all these things, then remember that time Trump was saying that, geez, I wish the Russians would go ahead and intervene in the election by
Mm-hmm.
hacking and leaking these emails for him. And so it was starting to become the kind of thing that they could believe in while everybody else, we're slower to catch up. You know what I mean? That like Donald Trump, the real estate tycoon, is a communist? Or like,
Right.
I know that the Russians aren't the communists anymore, but like if they're not the communists anymore, then what do they care who our president is? You know what I
Well, there
mean?
was
Like it just,
there was even some people reporting that he could have been owned by the Russians since the 80s. And it was like,
yeah.
what?
Jonathan Chait, Jonathan Chait, the liberal Democrat who was never sorry about supporting the war in Iraq, wrote that in New York Magazine.
Yeah.
They interviewed him about it on MSNBC in full credulity. That, well, listen, let me tell you something, Tommy. The thing is, Donald Trump went to Russia in 1987. So you see right there, like that's all. There was nothing else
That's
to
all
it.
you
That's
need.
all that they
That's
had. That's
that's the
all you need
link.
if you're them. That's right. So the belief was building on the part of the people who wanted to believe during this time.
Mm-hmm.
This is now again, um, the I want to make sure I'm not leaving out too much stuff from this time frame. The CIA and the FBI agents are already dismissing a lot of this stuff. And they're not allowed to interview Carter Page because, of course, he will plead innocence and they will believe him. Right?
Mm.
They have a note from the CIA, as you previously mentioned. They have a note from the CIA saying, oh, yeah, we know Carter Page. Not only is he not a Russian spy, he's our guy. He's a loyal asset. And we have no suspicions against him whatsoever. He's a good dude. You can tell the court we said that. And a guy named Kleinsmith was convicted, ultimately, and sentenced to a slap on the wrist for that because he deleted that. The FBI lawyer deleted that out of the CIA's memo when they turn that information over to the court. Like
Hmm.
put a white piece of paper over it and put it in the copy machine so it was gone, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. And
Um,
that's how he got
Total
his
manipulation.
FOIA request, right?
Right. That was so that they could go to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. So
Right.
I should explain this for people maybe that on the Fourth Amendment, it says that the cops can't search
Or
you.
FISA, not FOIA. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Did I say FOIA or FISA?
No, I said FOIA.
Yeah, but I might have
I'm
repeated it.
no, you said it right. That's what
I
made me
did.
think I had said it wrong. I was like, oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
right.
Oh, yeah. Cause I spelled it out right. Yeah. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Okay. Of
Yep.
78.
Yep.
So now under the Fourth Amendment, if the cops are looking at you, they've got to have probable cause. That means they got to have an argument that it's more likely than not that if they search you, and they have to make this argument to a judge who doesn't work for them, that if they search you, that they will find evidence of the crime that they are investigating. Right? We're not investigating Tommy. We're investigating a crime. We think he might have done it, and we think it's more likely than not we're going to find evidence that he did if we go look here. And here's why we think that, judge. Okay, that's probable cause. And as the Constitution says, particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. We're not allowed to do a fishing expedition. We're just allowed to look for evidence of the crime that we're investigating. In fact, I learned in elementary school, the cops had a warrant looking for stolen motorcycle parts. And then when they got to the guy's house, they found a bunch of drugs. But they took the drugs, but they weren't allowed to charge him with that because they didn't have a warrant for that. It was only for the motorcycle parts. And I think that was probably, they must have changed that law because that would have been in the 80s or some kind of loophole. Whatever. Anyway, that's probably apocryphal from my fifth grade teacher that I barely remember from 1986 or um uh 7. Anyway, um it was a while back. Point being, that ain't how a FISA warrant works. In a FISA warrant, the national cops, either the NSA or the FBI, and we're talking not really the cops, the FBI counterintelligence division,
Mm.
they go to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court and they say, Judge, we have a reasonable belief, which is nothing. We have a reason to believe, is another way that you would say that.
Hmm.
You don't even have to agree with us, Judge. We're not trying to convince you, really. We're just convincing you that we have what we think is a reasonable belief that this person is an agent of a foreign power or an agent of a foreign terrorist group. Now, if that's the case, they absolutely can go fishing on this person entirely. They can search everything about them, all their records, their houses, whatever, their things, and go fishing and looking for anything because they're an agent of a foreign nation. So in other words, they're not under the protection of regular civil liberties. They're not a U.S. person. They're
Right.
a foreign and not a foreign. See, a foreign national on American soil is still a U.S. person. We're talking about an agent of a foreign power. That's a meaningful term, agent. That means
Mm.
lawfully acting under the authority of a foreign state, or
Mm.
if it's a foreign terrorist, still like common law, married, right? Like respected as treated as the legal representative of the leaders of that terrorist group, acting under their authority and therefore subject to total search to whatever degree that they want. Now, Carter Page is an American citizen, and they had to lie to the court and say that they think that this guy is a Russian spy. And the CIA told them, no, he's not. He's a de facto American one. And they
Mm.
lied about that so that they could keep the thing going. That was their predicate. Now, once they got the FISA warrant with him, now it's two hops, right? Which means now
Yep.
they can tap the phone of anybody he's talking to, and he can tap their phone and anybody they're talking to.
Yep.
And so now you got the whole Trump campaign under surveillance over this thing. Now, during this whole time, this is now the fall, the election time, right? September, October, November into December of 16. Trump wins anyway. And the Clintons, she's throwing a fit. Obama made her concede that night, but now she's saying, no, it was stolen from me. It was the racists. It was Jim Comey re-announcing the that he was reopening the email investigation, and it was the Russians who rigged it for Trump. And she wanted to get Michael Morell. I have 100 footnotes for this because I know I sound crazy, so I have 100 footnotes for this in the book, 17 or something. Um, she tried to get Michael Morell, the acting director of the CIA, to brief the Electoral College that the Russians had stolen the election from her and given it to Trump, and that they should give it to her. And if they couldn't get him to do that, then they should at least send it to the House of Representatives so the House of Representatives could give it to John Kasich or Colin Powell or Paul Ryan, or I forgot who the other one was.
Now, see, here's something
And
that
that's
we
real. And as crazy as that sounds, that's what they were trying to get away with. So that's the atmosphere in the lead up to what your original question was about, the new things that we're learning about Obama ordering the creation of this assessment that was essentially an ambush for Trump. The issue essentially had died. Well, the Russians leaked some emails, they interfered in the election. The FBI had said in the Times, we don't think he was really trying to intervene for Trump. Now this thing comes out a week before he's inaugurated. It says, yes, they were. They were trying to do everything they could to put him in power. And so that's the true read of what happened here. That's why Trump is in power, is because there was essentially a coup and that he was in on it. In fact, I don't think there's much collusion. I got to go back and look. I really should reread it. I don't think there's necessarily direct collusion accusations in the ICA, but then it was just after that that they leaked the entire Steele dossier.
right.
So I did have the accusations in the ICA from the Steele dossier about Russia's intentions and how hard they were working on it all and whatever. But the part about Trump working with them on it, that really hit when Ben Smith from BuzzFeed posted the whole Steele dossier online, and it had all the crazy stuff in it. And that's where all the NPR ladies lost their minds and ran wild for the next while. And then go ahead.
Well, and then we found out what I was going to say is we just found out in the leaks that Tulsi, well, not leaks, but the release that Tulsi Gabbard released, is that going back to the beginning of the campaign, John Brennan had already discovered that Hillary Clinton had plotted to paint Donald Trump as an associate or
Right.
an agent of the Russians. And John Brennan, instead of coming out and stopping her or telling Obama, "Hey, man, you gotta say something about this," he went
Mhm.
to Obama, and they decided to double down on Hillary Clinton's
Yep.
claims that Trump was an associate or an agent of Russia.
And like I say, I think he started it. And I think she was like, oh, I see what he's doing, and got on board for the thing. And I think, I don't know if they played golf and discussed it or what, but like, it seems like this was a plot that he had put in motion before, and that she had her own like wing of it. And then her major operation was to take all these accusations and try to give them all the FBI, give the FBI something to run with, anything that they could do to have an investigation. Because if you have an investigation at all, that's news. You can make something
Yeah,
out
because
of it.
we already knew
And
that the
then, yeah,
Steele dossier was cooked up by the Clinton campaign. It was a campaign um, strategy to paint Donald Trump as, with the P tape and all that crap.
well, we suspected that, but we didn't know that until I believe December of 17. They
Yeah, but I'm
admitted
saying I'm
that.
saying today we already knew that
Oh, sure. Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah,
taking
yeah,
place.
yeah, yeah. That was when we learned that. That was, it was just opposition research. There was, it was just made, and it was by the Clinton campaign,
Right.
had hired the law firm to do it. The law firm had billed them for it, all their time and effort
Hmm.
and all these projects and the rest. So it was all very clear. And in fact, the Clinton campaign was fined for this by the Federal Election Commission. There was like
Yes.
a criminal penalty for this, and lying about it. And then so here's the thing, man, is Trump then gets angry and fires Comey. And then the FBI gets angry, and they, first of all, they try to come up with a plan to use the 25th Amendment to overthrow him. And they know that they don't have the support of the cabinet to do that. And so they back down from that, and they go, well, we're going to launch a special counsel investigation then. And so then that was the real start of Russiagate at that point, as far as like the, that's a weird way to say it, but like when they launched the special counsel investigation, that was what, in like March or April? I guess March of 17. So then they spent another full 2 years pretending to investigate. And they launched a FBI criminal investigation of Trump to see whether it was a crime for him to overthrow Comey, see whether there's a crime for the president to fire the head of the FBI.
Yeah.
Um, um, and was it in favor of? Did he do that because the Russians made him do it? And then on top of that, the special counsel investigation into the entire affair, and then from there, importantly, there are all of these things. Another thing that happened in December, right as Obama is telling them to come up with this ICA, this is where they come up with the frame up of Mike Flynn. So Mike Flynn had been the head of intelligence for, and remind me to do Jeff Sessions in a sec if I forget. He's next on the list.
Okay.
Flynn had been the head of intelligence for JSOC for the U.S. Army Delta Force in Iraq War II, leading the counterinsurgency effort under Stanley McChrystal. And then they went on from there to Afghanistan. He's again in charge of intelligence for the general in charge of the war. And at that time promoted, right? Not just the head of JSOC, but the head of the whole war at that time. Mm-hmm. And I hold him very responsible for that. And I talk a lot about him in my book, Fool's Errand, about the war in Afghanistan and his role and all that. But he'd gone from there to be the head of the DIA. And then now he's coming in and he's Trump's guy. And he's a click to the right of the usual military guy like that. Made him like obscure enough to want to go ahead and throw in with Trump. He didn't care. Obama had fired him kind of unceremoniously. In fact, he had been leaking to the Germans information for the Germans to leak to Assad to use to kill Al-Qaeda guys. Because Flynn, even though he hates the Ayatollah and probably would have been happy if you bombed Tehran, he still was like, yeah, but that doesn't mean we want to back Al-Qaeda suicide bombers against the Ayatollah's friends in Syria. What the hell is that? Right.
And didn't that cause a big blow up between him and Obama?
Yeah, that was what got him fired. There's an article at that time before he got fired. In fact, the article may have got him fired. The article was by Hirsch, and it was called Military to Military in the London Review of Books. And it was about how the DIA is giving info to the Germans to give to Assad to kill the bin Ladenites, the CIA's bin Ladenites.
Right.
And so that was what got him in trouble. So it doesn't sound like that bad of a guy to me in that context, or at least on the sliding scale of lunacy of the Obama era Syria policy. He's downright heroic at that time. It was also his DIA that published that report that was later leaked that said our allies are trying to create a Salafist principality in eastern Syria, which could blow back into western Iraq. We could see them create a real Islamic caliphate. And this would have been, they must have been listening to my show because this was in August of 2012. That they were saying that. And that was exactly what I was talking about with my guys at that time. That, like, in fact, if you listen to my show from the summer of 12 through the, from the summer of 13, well, in 12 too, but in the summer of 13 through the summer of 14, especially, I was interviewing every Al-Qaeda expert that I knew to talk about how Western Iraq is wide open right now. The Shiites, they got Shiites stand, but they don't give a damn about the West. And Patrick Coburn says no one's in charge. And the Islamic State could just roll right the hell in there and take it over, man, which is exactly what they did in the summer of 14.
And just as a quick aside, for those listening that aren't familiar with these acronyms, so you have the CIA, which is the Central Intelligence Agency, which everybody's familiar with, and everybody paints in a broad brush as being the intelligence arm of the United States government. The DIA is the Defense Intelligence Agency. They actually are tasked to do what the CIA was originally tasked to do when they were created back in the day, which is collecting intelligence. The DIA does not do covert ops, from what I understand, as much as the CIA does.
Right.
Maybe you could correct
the military
me on that.
does. The military does, but the DIA is not the organization where they launched their.
I just know DIA has always been kind of kept like kind of low key. It's not something people hear about very often. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're analysts. I don't think they have an operations division. The rest of the Pentagon is the operations division, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but so and now notably DIA, who's responsible for keeping track of the GRU, Russian military intelligence,
Hmm.
they were excluded from the intelligence community assessment. And just like the State Department Bureau of Intelligence and Research was excluded. So CIA has their advantages, but political intelligence, you bring in the State Department's INR, those are the guys who really would give you the best estimate of what the Russians would prefer to see happen here. Well, no wonder they were excluded. Brennan didn't want to hear from them, just as he
Hmm.
excluded people who were from what they call Russia House, which is, inside the CIA, the analysts who specialize in that part of Europe and especially Russia. And they weren't allowed to participate. It was all a bunch of hand-picked kooks, who were there to come up with the preconceived conclusion. And
Right.
then so Flynn, now in December, during the transition, December 16, he is the designated incoming national security advisor of the president elect of the United States, right? He's not running with Trump. His boss has been elected. He is already announced to be the national security advisor. He is a retired 3-star general and chief of the DIA. He has every right to have a phone call with the ambassador to Russia. Now, should Trump have been wise enough to tell all of his people, don't anybody say or do anything about Russia until we're in there? Be cool. Don't get us in any worse trouble. Like, yeah, he should have said that. But here's what happened. Flynn was in the Dominican Republic. So he's
Yeah. He
outside of
was
the
on vacation, wasn't he?
he's on vacation. He's in the Dominican
Right.
Republic, walking up and down on the beach, and he's on the phone with the Russian ambassador. So NSA is listening, and Flynn has to know that they are. He's on the phone with the Russian ambassador. He's definitely an agent of a foreign power, and he's in the Dominican Republic, so he's less protected at least.
Hmm.
They're definitely listening to his side of the conversation as well. So he has no reason to say or do anything stupid on the call anyway. And he didn't. What happened was Obama kicked some Russian diplomats out of the country. And Flynn said to the Russian ambassador, you do me a favor. Don't respond by kicking out a bunch of American diplomats in a tit for tat, because that'll just escalate things. And we're about to get sworn in, and we want to calm down tensions between us.
Hmm.
So don't do anything jerky in response to what Obama has done, please. And the Russians said, okay, fine, good idea. And they invited the Americans to a Christmas party instead.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, you know what they did? Oh, and then the other thing he said was, do me another favor. There's a UN Security Council resolution condemning the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza Strip by the Israelis. And I'd like you to veto that for us. And the ambassador, Kislyak, said, no, I'm not going to do that. And in fact, did not do that. And that was the end of that. So here, if he's acting as an agent of foreign power, he's acting as an agent of Israel. And he's trying to get Russia to work for him, and they say no.
Hmm.
But nothing here is him taking orders from Kislyak, for God's sake. And then the government just lied. He was out of town. There's a great Tucker Carlson documentary about this. You should watch it. It tells the story very well. It's probably the best thing I've seen on it, about how he was traveling and he got a phone call from Mike Pence. And Mike Pence says, look, I'm in the Situation Room, and they're showing me the transcript of your talk with Kislyak, the ambassador. And you're promising him here that, I'm skipping ahead one. No, I forgot the order of this. So I'll just say this part as long as I'm at it. No, this is how he finally got fired from the thing. I'm sorry, man. I got to go back and look at the timeline. I might be telling the story out of order here. This is how I
That's all
finally
right.
got fired. I am telling it out of order. But Pence says, I have the transcript here. It says here that you're telling the ambassador that you will lift sanctions on Russia. But you're just the incoming national security advisor. You have no right to do that. So it was illegal for you to do that. And under the Logan Act, which was passed in the George Washington administration, I believe, or maybe John Adams, but has never been successfully enforced. The Justice Department's only tried to bring prosecution under it twice and failed both times. It's a
Hmm.
law against private citizens making foreign policy, but it's a First Amendment thing and it's a moot point because no one makes deals with private American citizens about foreign policy anyway. And this is the designated incoming national security advisor has every right to say, hey, listen, we're planning on lifting the sanctions anyway, or whatever he wants to say. This is a total pretext. It was Joe Biden, the vice president, who was, oh, maybe we can get him on a Logan Act violation on this thing. But they were twisting it. They lied. Years later, the transcript came out. He didn't say that. He didn't say that at all. All he said was what I just said. He said,
Right.
listen, I want you to ignore what Obama did instead of retaliating. That's not making any promises about lifting sanctions or anything like that. They didn't even discuss it. And they just lied. And then they lied to Trump. And Flynn, I guess, was just outclassed and didn't think, well, wait a minute. I want to see that transcript. I want to hear that audio. Mr. President, don't fire me until we hear that audio. They're lying. I did
Mm.
not either say that. And that's how he could have played it, but Trump bowed down and fired the guy. But see,
Well, and I
man,
remember him saying that he was on vacation. And he's like, "Man, I was on vacation and I had been drinking, and I'm the ambassador to Russia calls me, and so I get in a conversation with him, and I didn't really remember what I said, and that's how the FBI nailed him on charging
right.
him with lying to Congress, is
Well,
because
no, lying to
he
them,
did
to them.
or lying to the FBI. Yeah, right.
Yeah, they got
And
him in a perjury trap.
yeah, because he didn't remember word for word what he had said, and he was working off of what Mike Pence told him he had said, saying, "Well, I don't remember saying that, but Mike Pence told me I said this." And so
No,
now,
that's where you're borrowing from me screwing up and getting in the wrong order. The Pence
oh,
thing was
okay,
later.
okay,
But
okay,
see, what
okay.
happened was you're more right than you know because we have the emails from the FBI agents where they know
Hmm.
they're setting him up. Are we
Mm,
trying to get information from the guy or we're trying to get him in a perjury trap? We're trying to trick him into saying something false. Okay, gotcha. And then they practiced it, they rehearsed it. How are we going to, and these are experts in this anyway, but they practice their lines. How are we going to trick him into saying something false? And then he said, I don't know about things that he didn't know. They said, oh, we just want to talk with you, buddy. And like, so he didn't know he was being interrogated at all.
yeah, because
And then,
didn't it
hey, do
happen
you
like
remember
at his
mentioning
house or
sanctions?
something?
Huh?
Didn't it happen at his house or something? It was some like they put
No, it
him in
was at the
a.
White House. I believe it was at the White House. But
Oh, okay.
they made it seem like, hey, of course we're all friends here, dude. We're all government employees here. We're not questioning you. We're just asking you questions. That
Mm,
like, hey man, what was the deal with that whole thing or whatever? And he's like, oh, I don't know. I think it was fine. I don't know. I don't remember anything else than that. And then they wrote in their reports to each other. Well, he didn't really lie. Um, we didn't. He seemed to be honest with us. Anything they said to us, he at least believed he was telling the truth and was totally forthright with us.
mm,
However, we think we can get him anyway because this one thing that he didn't say he remembered, we think we can pretend that he did and whatever. And the thing, and then the two agents that hated him the most, Strzok and his girlfriend, his mistress, Lisa Page, no connection, no relation to Carter there. They wrote back and forth about, and we have in her words where she said, listen, I'm rewriting this 302 and I'm trying to save Bob, whoever the other guy's voice, as best as I can here, and then edited the 302 and
mm,
edited lies into his statement or enough of a mistruth that they could try to say that he was obfuscating to them and lie to them. But they totally just set him up. And a lesson for everyone here that the nicer an FBI agent is to you, the more he actually is interrogating you right now. And
mm,
can lie on his 302 about what you said and then charge you with lying to him. So what
mm,
you do is you just don't talk to FBI agents at all. Just like we were talking about with agents of a foreign power. That word agent is incredibly meaningful. It means that you're not to regard them as actual human beings, like a guy named Steve with a middle name and a job. He's an agent of the state. And he has an agenda, which is getting you in trouble. So you just say, I reserve all of my rights, all my pertinent rights under the Bill of Rights, and I only will speak and talk to you with professional legal representation, as is my right. No offense. I'd love to talk to you, mate. Don't you say that. Let me talk to my lawyer and then I'll talk to you then, whatever. But just
yeah.
do not talk two beds because they could say to you, "In today Wednesday," and you go, "Yeah," and then they write down, "The guy said it was Tuesday." Now you're in trouble. It's just like you lied to a judge under oath, even though
Hmm.
he's just a cop. And even though he's lying about what you said, they don't have to record their interrogations at all. They can just write down whatever they want in those 302s. So you got to always be, and that was what happened to Flynn. Like, oh, he
John
actually didn't do
Kiriakou.
anything that we have on him. Let's just make something up and we'll write that in the 302.
John Kiriakou does a really great job of discussing that the technical legal terms of like asset and agent and stuff like that because he was embedded in that world for
Mm-hmm.
so long.
Right. Yeah. There's another major part of the Flynn story, which is how he was set up is this group, the Cambridge Four, in um in England. There's a guy named Stephen Schrage, and he used to be an advisor to Mitt Romney, and he wrote this giant thing for Matt Taibbi's website Racket about how sorry Carter Page, you're my fault because he was working on his PhD at Cambridge under Stephen Halper, who
Mm.
is an American fixer for the Republicans. He's the one who stole Jimmy Carter's debate talking points and gave them to the Republicans in 1980.
Hmm.
And is a long time kind of dirty trickster for the Republicans, doing clandestine domestic dirty trick stuff and getting paid through the Office of Net Assessment, which is the Pentagon think tank. And so there's a group that Schrage calls the Cambridge Four, and that would be Halper, Richard Dearlove, who's the former director of MI6. You might remember he's the guy that wrote the Downing Street memo that said
Hmm.
the intelligence is being fixed around the policy about the weapons
Hmm.
of mass destruction
Yeah.
when he worked for Tony Blair, same guy.
Okay.
And then there's a guy named Christopher Andrew, who was a professor at Cambridge. And who am I leaving off? It's going to come to me in a minute, maybe.
Roger Stone. No, I'm just playing.
But
I'm
anyway,
joking. I'm joking. I'm joking.
no, poor guy. They target. Well, I shouldn't say that, but they targeted him too.
Yeah,
Um,
they jacked
but
his life all up.
so what happened was it was his idea. They said we should bring someone from the Trump campaign. So he goes, "Oh, okay, I'll get that guy Carter Page." And it was when and Steele is the other. Steele himself is the other of the
Oh,
four.
was it? Okay.
Um, and so when Page got there, he was nobody. And then, or was it? Wait, maybe it wasn't Steele. Because I think Schrage says it was when Christopher Andrew pointed Page out to Halper that Halper went, "Oh, hi, how are you? Get to know you." Nah, nah, nah.
Hmm.
Started coming up to him. And then it was after that that his name ended up in the Steele dossier and that
Uh,
Halper. And I think Steele may have even admitted to the FBI, or Danchenko maybe admitted to the FBI that he got Page's name from Halper. I think it's all in the book. I'm sorry, man. I get
no,
lost.
you're all right.
And then the other than this is worse, is there's this woman named Lakova, who was a Russian national, who was an expert on the Soviet Union. She's a historian, and she was working on her PhD on the story of a previously unknown Soviet spy network in the United States in the 1930s. And so that's why she was at this same conference. And she didn't even sit next to Flynn or anything. But they made up this whole story that Flynn was banging her and took her back to his hotel room and all this stuff and was cheating on his wife with her, and that she is a Russian spy and
Is
that
she
he
the
was
one who is she the one who
compromised.
got arrested
No,
at
no,
the
but she was just, ruthlessly smeared. You're thinking of Maria Butina, the gun rights activist. I'll get to
yes,
that in
that
a
yes.
second. Yeah, remind me. So, but they smeared this woman as a honeypot, right? As a spy and a whore sent to bait Mike Flynn and entrap him and blackmail him. When of course none of this ever happened. He never had sex with her or whatever. They never left together or they barely talked to each other at the conference. That was it. But that was all they needed to like drum up this lie. And then it was her own professor, what do they call it when you're a PhD student and you have like your overlord or whatever, your professorial what you call it? Like I didn't go to college, dude.
God, I
You
know
know
what
what
you're
I
trying.
mean?
I know exactly what you're trying to say, and the word just like it's
Well,
my
whatever. It was
mind's blank.
Christopher Andrew. Christopher Andrew he was her guy, her mentor, PhD, what you call it? And he was the one who threw her under the bus
Mm.
and smeared her. She was a new wife and mother, smeared her
Oh
as a
man.
spy and a whore, ruined her life. And she sued him over and over and over again until the courts finally says, stop suing them. We don't have standing to sue, even though she totally did. And she was just totally as a horrible smear. Just another brick in the wall.
Yeah, like what,
And
24 years old, your whole life is just
yeah.
yeah.
And then so now Strange recorded all of his conversations with Halper because he was his PhD guy. And so we have the audio of Halper saying, yep, wheels are in motion. That Mike Flynn, he's screwed, man. We're going after him. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to push him, and then he's going to explode. That's why he's so unsuitable for this job. He's such a short-tempered freak, and he's going to get himself fired. You just watch. And all this. And it was just showing they set him up. These were the guys who set up Flynn. And, you know, they were working clearly in this international operation to get Trump's guys in trouble in this way. Now, with Jeff Sessions, they had even less of a kernel of truth against him. He was working on Trump's campaign, but he's also sitting U.S. Senator. And he had met with Ambassador Kislyak in his office, where in fact he dressed him down over Russian actions in Moldova and Ukraine in front of his staff. Who's Jeff Sessions' staff? Well, they're all retired Army colonels.
Mm.
But anyway, yeah, this was a giant nest of commie treason in Senator Jeff Sessions' office.
Right.
Right. And so that was that. There was nothing else to it. I would say more sentences about it, but there's nothing else to say. That was the meeting. Another one was Kislyak, not even Kislyak, somebody gave a speech. I don't know. Somebody gave a speech at the Council for the National Interest, which was founded by Richard Nixon. And it's, you know, the National Interest, or maybe it's the National Interest Foundation. The Council for the National Interest is different. The National Interest Foundation. And that publishes the National Interest magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And Sessions was standing in a line, or Kislyak was standing in a line while the other one came by and shook his hand. Said, hi, nice to see you. And they went, oh my God, Sessions had contacts with Russian officials. Yeah, the ambassador. and he denied it because when the FBI did their background check of him to work on the Trump campaign, he denied that he had any substantive contact with Russian agents as a representative of the Trump campaign. Well, he didn't. He met with this guy in his Senate office as a representative of the great state of Alabama.
Right. I remember this.
Yep. So you got nothing but another little whiff of hot air, right? You got a bunch of hot air, water vapor building up and beginning to the untrained eye look like smoke. Mm-hmm. And where there's smoke, there's fire. But no, this is all a bunch of crap. It's just piled on top of each other. Same thing with Maria Butina. Well, she's pretty and has red hair. So get it? She's a whore and a spy and a sex swallow, spy bait. And everywhere she went, she was compromising and blackmailing Republican politicians. Except that no, she wasn't. None of that is true. And they not only charged with being an unregistered agent of a foreign power, which is all of DC and is barely a crime at all, and was not even true in her case. She was a gun rights activist who came to America to get Americans to help her get guns legalized in Russia. Mm-hmm. Because what the hell is this? Russia? Let's legalize guns. Be a free country instead was her whole thing. Mm-hmm. So they locked her in solitary confinement.
Is she still in prison?
Guilty. And by the way, the Robert Mueller investigation, special counsel investigation, they refused to even take on the case. It was some lower scum that did this.
Mm.
Right. And it seemed like it was part of the overall Russia thing, but it wasn't at all. There was nothing to it.
Is she still in prison, or did she
No,
eventually
they let
get?
her go.
They let her go.
They let her go and go
I
back.
remember
James
hearing
Bamford
the
wrote a great thing
story,
in
and
her
I was
defense.
like, "What are they doing?"
No,
Like,
well, see, there was a pretty redhead named Anna Chapman a few years before who was a Russian spy. So
mm,
then they were like, ah, see, pretty redhead. Get it?
gotcha.
Doesn't mean nothing, though.
Yeah.
And there's a million of them, man. I mean, I got 75 pages in the book. They said that the Russians hacked the electrical grid in Vermont. They're going to turn off the power and freeze everybody to death in the dead of winter. They said that the Russians hacked C-SPAN and piped RT over it when it's just some idiot C-SPAN hit the wrong button. Doesn't mean anything. And the Vermont thing was just embellished from an employee of theirs had some kind of malware on his laptop that wasn't even his work laptop and wasn't connected to the grid in any way and didn't have anything to do with anything. Had nothing to do with Russia, had nothing to do with any. And and they went on and on. The Havana syndrome, where the Russians are supposedly shooting American government employees with a magic mind ray gun that gives them all a really bad headache all over the world or whatever. With the CIA themselves dismissed as being nothing but Indian short-tailed
Didn't
crickets
didn't
outside of the
60
embassy
Minutes
in
do
Cuba.
like something on that?
Probably.
It was
Just
it
a
was like
hoax. It was completely
CBS
stupid,
did like an
hysterical
hour
crap.
long. I think it was CBS did like an hour long investigation on Havana syndrome, and then comes to find out like a year later, you got the CIA coming out going like, yeah, like that's not even real. None of
Yeah.
that's real.
Yeah. No, even the CIA debunked it is completely fake. And
Yeah.
then I hope I'm not missing any of the major ones here. Let me
Who were
look.
okay? So there was a I kind of I want to say that there were like 12 Russians that were indicted.
Well, okay, so there were two indictments. One of them was against the GRU for doing the hack, and it just blamed them, but that had no evidence in it. And then the other one was for the
Which
troll
hack was
farms.
this that
Oh,
they
the
were saying?
DNC hack stuff.
DNC. Okay. All right.
But it just makes a bunch of claims. There's no proof in it. And then the other one was against the troll farms for
Mhm.
buying some Facebook ads. This is another hugely embellished
It was
tale.
like what $100,000 worth of Facebook ads that nobody saw.
Yeah, I forgot the exact dollar amount, but it was very little. And not only did nobody see them, but they almost all of them had nothing to do with politics at all. The ones that were about politics were about all different things, but it was all just clickbait stuff, right? It was
Mhm.
like Jesus wants you to stop masturbating, and then here's glowing green Hulk, Bernie Sanders arm wrestling Hillary Clinton, or maybe it was like Jesus arm wrestling the devil about masturbation, and then Bernie was just lifting weights or something. I forget. It was just nonsense. And then most of them were bought after the election. It was just clear. This had nothing to do with the election or interference in the election. It's just grasping at straws of this crap. And Shane and Mazzetti, these idiots at the New York Times, they go, oh man, there were as many as 75 million impressions of these ads. That's as many voters as turned out to vote in the thing. Okay, yeah, but how many impressions overall on Twitter during that time? Oh, 75 trillion, right? So this doesn't mean anything, dude. Like, this is the worst. Gareth Poor said this is like the worst
Well,
abuse
and
statistic
but
in world history.
they utilized that information, that little bit of information that you just gave us, basically these ridiculous freaking memes that
Right.
meant nothing, that nobody looked at, that nobody shared, nobody cared about, to lock up that guy for tweeting out that one meme that said,
Uh-huh.
if you want to vote from home, just text Hillary to blah, 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 blah. And
Right.
he got locked up for what, 2 years?
Yep.
He's
Supreme
finally out of
Court just
prison
let him
now.
go. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, and I left out Paul Manafort. So Paul Manafort
Oh, that's
was,
right.
yeah, his expertise is helping strongmen around the world, basically. But he's no Russian traitor, dude. He's an avowed supporter of Vladimir Zelensky and hates Vladimir Putin, dude. He's
Hmm.
a pro-Ukrainian partisan. And I urge anyone who's confused about this issue to watch his interview with Patrick Bet David. He makes his sympathies perfectly clear, and he's obviously sincere. His job working for the supposedly pro-Russian president of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych, was all about moving him west. He was serving America's interests there 100%. The syllogism during Russiagate was, well, he worked for Yanukovych, and Yanukovych is Putin, and so Manafort is Putin, and so obviously Manafort is here to control Trump for Putin. But this is all just completely stupid, made up crap by some stupid lady, idiot, NPR listening conspiracy kook who has no idea what she's talking about at all. In fact, he was there to move Yanukovych west and was succeeding in doing so until, as Henry Kissinger and George Soros both said, Angela Merkel botched the negotiations in 2013 and made him change his mind and give up on the association agreement with the European Union. And so it was just completely false that he was a Russian agent at all. And then here's where the Ukrainian government actually did intervene in the election on behalf of Hillary Clinton. They forged a little black ledger of Manafort's transactions and included $12 million in cash transactions. That was completely fake and bogus that they pretended was bribes from Russia. And they used that and the fake controversy over that to fire him from Trump's campaign when he was the manager of the campaign at that time.
And there
And
were
they,
articles before the whole Russiagate scenario came out and really blew up. There were articles talking about how Ukraine was attempting to help the Clinton campaign beat Donald Trump.
right. Um, and in fact, well, I'm sorry, there's so many of these, but I want to make sure I'm not missing stuff. Oh, here was something that I thought was really important to mention.
Hmm.
Was this guy Dowd? Is it Matthew Dowd? John M. Dowd. I don't know who Matthew Dowd is. I don't know whoever you are. Sorry, I keep bringing up your name. John M. Dowd was Trump's lawyer. And now this is according to Bob Woodward. But I think this is credible for what it's worth. He told the story to Woodward. He's a powerful Washington lawyer in a fancy suit type of a guy. He comes to Trump and he says to Trump at the dawn of the special counsel investigation, he says to Trump, he goes, listen, man, it's just you and me in the room, attorney-client privilege, swept for bugs. I have to know if I'm going to represent you right at all here. I have to know the truth. Is there anything to this Russia shit? And Trump goes, no, man, the whole thing is so stupid and bogus and fake. Oh, we didn't mention the Steele dossier, the thing about Trump paying prostitutes to pee on a bed in a five-star hotel in Moscow.
I
Because it's
mentioned
the
it. I
same bed
mentioned
that,
it earlier. Yeah,
oh, did
yeah,
you? That
yeah.
Obama and his wife supposedly has slept in. So
His
he
quote
says,
unquote wife.
yeah, well, that's a whole other interview. There's maybe a really large clitoris. I'm not sure what's going on there, but so Dowd says to Trump, listen, did you do this? And Trump goes, no, dude, this is so stupid. I swear to God, it's not true. None of it's true. So Dowd says, okay, well, here's my strategy, dude. I don't want to play coy with any of this. I want to take everything we've got and turn it over to the special counsel. Every scrap of paper from the Trump campaign. We'll just give it all to him and say, come on, man. Now we're being fair with you. You be fair with us. And that was what he did. And he met with Andrew Weissman and he goes, listen. And Weissman told him, and Mueller told him, we understand that in these things, the special counsel, you might have heard the quote from Trump going, a special counsel. Oh, now I'm fucked, right? Like that'll ruin your whole presidency,
Right.
So Mueller said, for people not familiar, Mueller had been W. Bush's FBI director. So he leans Republican anyway, he says, listen, we understand that a lot of times in these things that the process can be the punishment. And we don't want to do that to you. That ain't fair. So thank you for being square with us and bringing us everything up front like this. We promise that we'll be square with you. We'll be on the up and up. We'll complete this investigation as fast as we can and move on. Nah, man. It just goes to show how absolutely dishonest this was, where
They just drug
the
it on.
investigation itself was the end, just like with the leaks to the FBI in the first place. From
Wasn't
all
it? There was one moment towards the end of the investigation, and I can't remember exactly what was going on. I want to say Adam Schiff came out and accused Donald Trump of something, and Mueller finally came out and was like, none of that is true. None of
Okay,
what is,
yes.
and that's the only time Mueller
Yeah,
ever said
that's
anything
right.
publicly.
Okay, so it wasn't Schiff. It was actually my old friend Jason Leopold. He used to write for
Oh,
antiwar.com
okay. Okay.
years ago. He's a good guy, but he screwed that one, man. He was writing for BuzzFeed, and he had a report that said that Michael Cohen, Trump's lawyer, had testified to the grand jury that Trump had made him lie to the Congress.
That's what it was. Yes. I knew there was, I couldn't remember
Yeah.
exactly what the story
And he had
was.
a single source for it, and it wasn't true. And so this is such an important point, though, that what did Mueller do? Mueller put out a press release saying that's not true. Well, he with no tongue speaks after all.
Right.
Okay. We've had 10,000 leaks from the FBI and the CIA to the media over this time,
2 years of
to
this
the Post and the
bullshit.
Times. Yeah, 3 years now, 2 years of this investigation. And at no time could he put out a press release saying the American people can rest assured that our investigation is not leading us toward the conclusion that Donald Trump is a blackmailed slave of the Russian Federation, a traitor serving foreign interests and power in the White House. We tried to track down any evidence of the blackmail or the long-term Russian campaign to cultivate Donald Trump as their agent, and we cannot verify that. And we do not think that it is true. And so we want you to know that at least that part of it, the part that you or your wife may be afraid of, that no, that's not right. Donald Trump is not a foreign agent.
Right.
Maybe he had some guys working for him. We'll let them all off the hook in another year and a half from now. But at least for now, you need to know that you can chill with the besweated panic attacks, because in fact, America has not been taken over by a slave of the Kremlin here. Right. He
Right.
could have let us know that. And instead it was like, nope, you're just going to have to watch The View speculate for the next 2 years. Should people really watch that? I remember when that show first came out thinking, well, that's not going to go anywhere because these idiot women don't know anything. But then that's who their audience is too. And
And
so
it's
the
still
idiot
here.
audience doesn't know that they don't know anything. And so they get to help forge the consensus in the country. You know what I think is happening here? And then they just, whatever. And that's what
Yep.
we'll have to just suffer through and deal with. And I mean, to me, this is like one hair short of shooting the guy in the head in Dallas, dude. This is, yeah, to think that the American system could be this corrupt, that the FBI and DOJ and CIA would come after a major party candidate for president like this, much less president elect and then president in this way, is unbelievable, dude. Like, to
Yeah.
your original question, Barack Obama belongs in the penitentiary for this. Him and all of his guys. Like, what they have done is absolutely criminal here. You know, it's really unbelievable what they did. And anyway, there's a bunch more, but everybody's got to read the book. It costs $30.
Yeah, go get the book. It's called Provoked. This was all a scam. This is an infomercial for Scott's book.
There you go.
Provoked. Go to the libertarianinstitute.org and find Provoked under the book section and get it. You'll not only find out everything you need to know about this nonsense, the Russiagate hoax, but everything you need to know about the history of Russia and the US and the new Cold War since the end of the last Cold War. So like he dives
Exactly.
into all that. It's a
That's right.
it's a massive treatise on US Russian policy. So
Yeah.
hey,
And
let's
man,
touch on
one
Gaza
more thing.
real quick before you go.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, check out my new show with Daryl Cooper, Provoked, for 3 weeks in a row. We're the #1 new podcast on Apple Podcasts.
Oh, it's so good.
Isn't that great?
It's so good. Yeah.
Killing.
Yeah.
But Gaza. Gaza is the worst thing in the world, man. The Israeli government is the worst thing. It's the most criminal regime in the world. It's the worst thing about our country is our
What
support.
what is so what exactly is happening? Because I don't follow foreign policy very
Yeah.
much. I have a lot going on in my life because of work,
Fair enough, man. That's
you
how it
know,
should be, really.
and so
Yeah.
what exactly is happening? Because the last I heard, the that there was like a ceasefire like taking place, and then Israel
Right.
broke the ceasefire, but
Yep.
it seemed like the fighting had kind of died down. There was a release of hostages. Um, Wasn't there an American that came home not that long ago?
Um,
Am I
yeah,
wrong about that?
yeah, no, Trump did get that, but they're not making any real progress in ending the thing. I mean, what it really comes down to, man, is the Israelis want that land, and what they really want is the West Bank. But Hamas gave them the excuse that they needed to complete the ethnic cleansing of the Gaza Strip,
Yeah.
which is what they're doing. So that's the long and the short of it is they've already essentially bombed the place to smithereens. They
Mm.
bombed, you know, the cities of Gaza City, Khan Yunis, and Rafah basically off the face of the earth. They got people living in tents. They've destroyed all the hospitals, all the schools and government buildings, all the like any government office that would have had the records of land ownership or family histories or like any of these kinds of things, all have been obliterated. So
Yeah.
their society has been literally obliterated with bombs and bulldozers. And they're just clearing it out and destroying it all and cleansing the strip. You'll hear them say over and over again now that they're looking forward to the voluntary emigration of the people of Gaza after they've made the place completely unlivable. That
Mm.
they would then attempt to force 2 million people or whoever's left um, to leave the Gaza Strip. And they're trying to force other countries like Indonesia or Ethiopia or Libya to take them. I mean, it's completely outrageous.
Jordan. Yeah, I've
It's
heard John
completely
Mearsheimer was on
in
with
direct violation of the Geneva Conventions. It's completely criminal behavior.
John
Um,
Mearsheimer was on Tucker today, and
I know I want to see that. I just saw
it
the
was
very
it was
first part
good.
of it.
They were talking a little bit about it, and he was talking about the Greater Israeli Project, the Greater
Yeah.
Israel Project,
Mhm.
and how it was always from the beginning um, a situation where Israel was trying to like push the people out of Palestine and push out
Yeah,
and take
that's right.
over Gaza and take over not only Gaza but take over Lebanon and Syria and
You know
these
what?
established countries.
Yeah, there's a clip of Harry Truman with a map going, now the Jews wanted to take all this, but we had to rein them in a little bit and tell them no. And like,
Yeah. So what do they have like a is there like a blockade up? Is that what's going on? Because people keep talking about intentional
yeah,
starvation.
absolutely. Yes, look, Palestine ain't a country. Palestine is an Indian reservation,
Mm.
right? Israel is on top of Palestine. The Gaza Strip and the West Bank used to be under the control of Egypt and Jordan between 48 and 67. But in 67, they never say it this way, but they quite literally annexed the West Bank and the Gaza Strip then, because the point is they occupied it with no intention of ever giving it back and letting the people who are from there live on it and have sovereignty. They always meant to steal it. Problem is, there's all these Palestinians that they hate and want to murder are sitting on top of the land they want to steal. When they created Israel in the first place, they were able to do a massive ethnic cleansing campaign. So they created an 80-20 super duper Jewish majority where they could have an Israeli democracy and get away with that. For what it was worth, it worked, right? But with the entire controversy comes from the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza Strip. They stole all this land, they stole all the people with it, and they haven't been able to figure out how to get rid of them. And Hamas, on their kidnapping mission on October the 7th, went way overboard. And then, of course, the Israelis embellished what they did by another quite a few degrees in order to turn it into the moral outrage that they needed to launch this. And then I swear to God, it just drives me crazy. You can read in the morning email from Reason Magazine every day about how, oh, Israel's just fighting Hamas. No, they're
So
not.
how big of a
Netanyahu
deal?
himself says we're destroying their homes, so they have no homes to move back to, so they have to leave.
Well, I heard today, I saw a headline and I didn't get to read on it, so I don't know all the details. But I saw that the UK is now acknowledging Gaza and Palestine as a people. How big of a deal is that?
Well, the French, I think, already said they were going to, but did not actually yet. But they said they are going to recognize Palestinian statehood. I believe Macron did. And then Trump was in England and apparently told Starmer, I don't care if you do or not, doesn't make any difference, which is not true. If it doesn't make any difference, then why don't we recognize Palestinian statehood then? You know, it
Well, from what
absolutely
I
makes a
from what I
difference.
and see what I saw was Trump said I never talked to him about that. That's what drew my attention.
I need
So
to look more into it
apparently,
because what I saw, I thought it was public. I thought it was a public statement that he said in front of reporters. I don't care if he does it.
oh, I don't
And then,
know.
but what you're quoting is him saying, "Oh, peoplehood." That's not the same thing as he's acknowledging their state. That sounds like a
Well, and
half-ass kind
yeah,
of thing.
like I
I don't
said, I
know.
didn't look into it. I it was like right before we got on here. So
Right.
I just ran across the headline and I didn't
But
really
look,
look
I think
into it.
there's this is the best part of of Muslim immigration in Europe is pressure on these governments to back off their support for Israel now. Enough is enough of this. And man,
Mm,
what they're really doing, dude, they are starving these people. You know, they force UNRWA out. They claim that UNRWA, that was the UN
mm,
relief agency for the refugee relief agency. Why are they refugees? Because Israel stole Palestine from them. That's why they live there in the first place, is they're refugees. And the Israelis ran the UN agency that was feeding them out and said, we're going to replace that with our own food agency. But then they're just luring them. They say, oh, to get the food, you have to cross this battle zone. Oh, you to get this food, you have to walk for 12 miles to get here.
mm,
And then, there's far less food going around, far less
mhm,
food getting in than under the UN. So you have more than 100 people, almost 200 people have now starved to death, literally, including, of course, most of those are babies. Sounds like a low number, maybe, until you're talking about what? Tens and tens and tens and tens and tens and tens of little babies starving to death. What are
mhm.
you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's like 2 million
And then
people, and wasn't it like something like a million of them were under the age of 18? Something
yeah,
like
I
that.
mean, yes, the
It's
majority of the
insane.
population are minors. The majority of the population of Gaza are under 18.
Yeah.
Um, and then what they're doing is they have far fewer food sites. They make people come long distances across battle zones. And then when they get there, they machine gun them and blast them with artillery and with tank shells. And Tommy, I'm not lying. It sounds like a horror show out of a movie, out of some bullshit. It sounds like a lie.
It
It
does.
sounds like
I
something
heard
where
Pierce Morgan was
it's
talking
true.
yesterday. He was talking to somebody. I can't remember who it was. I heard him talking to yesterday, but they were talking about how they would hold these children down and use their testicles in target practice.
I didn't know about the holding them down for it, but I would buy it. Yeah, that they thought
Yeah,
it was funny that they were shooting children. I saw a British doctor saying that they were targeting children's genitals, that it was some kind of game to them
yeah,
to do. And
yeah,
then and they've clearly been very deliberately sniping toddlers in the head. And you had
yeah.
the doctor saying, I saw this happening and I thought, man, it must be one crazy sniper out there that's doing this. And then he talked with the other doctors from around the strip and they told him the same thing. But
Right.
this is a standing order to do. And when they called them liars, and so they published x-rays in the New York Times, and they couldn't show the ones where their heads were blown entirely off their shoulders. The Times wouldn't publish it. They did publish the ones where you can see the bullet lodged in the people's brain, in the kids' brains, little babies, little
Yeah.
toddlers. They deliberately shoot pregnant women, and they deliberately lure people in like a mousetrap, is what Norman Finkelstein said. This is straight Nazi behavior. This
Mm,
is the kind of cruelty um, that Steven Spielberg was highlighting in Schindler's List, right when he shows the little girl in the red coat.
hmm
Like, look, man, these are real people. And like, oh, look at this Nazi sniping and murdering these Jews in their concentration camp for sport, for target practice. That's
hmm
what the Israelis do. They
hmm
murder these people for fun when they're lining up, desperate, starving people lining up to get food, and then they machine gun them, dude.
mm.
Like like the worst communist or Nazi villains from the worst World War II movie you ever saw. Um, and then I don't know if you saw this as I guess you didn't. There's a guy named Andrew Aguilera who is Green Beret, dude, special forces, spent all these years fighting the terror wars. And he got a job as a mercenary over there, contract to provide security for the food relief agency.
hmm
And he gave this testimony to the BBC and to another interviewer too. Um, talking about how he saw the IDF and American mercenaries machine gunning and murdering these people, shooting them with tank rounds, innocent civilians lined up to get food. He told the story of a 12-year-old boy. He got his name, Amir, I believe. 12-year-old boy who had come 12 kilometers to starving, his clothes falling off his body. He said he's skin and bones, begging for food. He gets a little bit of food in his bowl. He sets the bowl down. He puts his hands out, and the guy is like, well, I don't have anything to give you. Like, I'm a merc with a gun here. I don't have anything to give you.
Mm-hmm.
And the little boy goes, no, no, like this. And so he puts his hands out, and the little boy takes his hands and he kisses them and says, thank you. He says it in Arabic and in English. He says, thank you. And he takes his little bit of food. And then the Israelis start firing at the crowd. And the little boy drops his food and takes off running.
Mm.
And then the guy says, and then he can hear when the crowd gets around the corner, the Israelis machine gunned them all to death and killed the little boy.
Mm.
Machine gun the crowd of people. Like, this is like I was raised on. See, the Nazis thought that they were the master race. So they get to do this because everybody else is just a mud person to them.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going on here, dude. That's
Mm-hmm.
what's going on here. These people tell themselves that they're so special and that the Palestinians are not even farm animals, not even livestock. They're wild animals. You may feel free to shoot them in the head,
Yeah.
even their babies, even their toddlers. They don't care. They think it's funny. And I
Yeah.
dare anybody to sit there and watch these special forces, this special forces guy testify to this, and then read Liz Wolfe from Reason Magazine say that all Israel's trying to do is stop Hamas by
Mm.
deliberately murdering men, women, and children who are starving to death when they
Yeah.
line up to beg for food from their enemies. I wish Israel would root Hamas out of Reason Magazine headquarters. We see who survived that.
Well, and the problem is like the special forces guy you're talking about, like nobody has him on. Like nobody hears the story, you know? It's
Yeah,
just it's
it's getting around.
good luck
And
getting him
look,
on
if
Patrick Bet David, or something like that.
well, we'll see. I mean, he made a pretty big splash, and like being a Green Beret is almost Delta, man, right? Like it's a step
Yeah.
up from Ranger. It ain't nothing. This is
Right.
special forces. This is an
Yeah.
American patriot. This is a guy who, everybody likes to talk big, but it turns out that like when the government says, hey, we need somebody killed right now, this is the guy that they call to do it. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
why has the US government been leaning on him all this time? Why did they send him, I'm assuming, to Nangarhar province to tangle with Islamic State?
Right.
Because when asked, he'll show up and do the job.
Mm-hmm.
He's Uncle Sam's guy. So why is he saying all this? Because of what a communist he is? Because of what a Muslim he is? He's a goddamn Green Beret. He's saying it because it's a moral outrage.
Yeah.
Says it's the worst thing he's ever seen in all his years in this profession. He's never seen anything like it. And this is
Well,
in Haaretz, too. You can read on the front page of Haaretz. It's military officials, Israeli military officials themselves confirm that they're doing this.
mm-hmm. Yeah, for real.
It is. It's a genocide. The thing is, people go, when you can't say genocide until it's already 6 million dead, and then you're looking at it in the aftermath. Well, but that's not the definition. The definition is an attempt to erase a part of a whole or part of a society, right? So, in other words, a lot of massacres ain't enough. Like killing a lot of people is killing a lot of people, but
Mm.
deliberately and systematically starving people to death, deliberately and systematically destroying all of their water and food and sewage,
Mm-hmm.
deliberately and systematically destroying their schools and universities and mosques and churches and government offices that hold their papers and records. And when they say, well, what we're doing is we're trying to make them all leave. And when they say that we're going to turn off the water and torture them until they surrender. And when they say that the Bible says that we can murder anyone as long as we pretend to call them Amalek first, because 3,000 years ago, the creator of the universe said that the ancient Hebrews had the right and even the duty to kill every last man, woman, child, and oxen among the Amalek. Well, Amalek's gone. They did. They killed them all. There's no Amalek. Nobody pretends to really believe that God whispered to Benjamin Netanyahu that the Palestinians are Amalek. And so that same Bible verse, just say that.
No, the
It's just a lie,
Palestinian.
but it's an
No,
excuse, and they use it.
no, the
And he said it,
Palestinians.
Tommy, in a speech to the leaders of the officers of the IDF. This wasn't just a statement he made. This was a speech to the officer corps. This
Right.
is who the enemy is. Exterminate them. Okay? That's genocide. That's when the explicit intent is to destroy this people. If you can be commie enough to accept that form of language here, the Palestinians are a people, then that's what the Israelis are doing to them,
But
destroying it.
where people
Them.
get lost is the name Israel, right? The Palestinians that are being oppressed and being tortured and being murdered are the Israelis of the Bible. Those are the people of that land.
That's
The
right.
people that call themselves Israelis today are Europeans that
That's true.
moved to and took over Israel, that
That's
land.
right. That's right. You know, the Roman exile never happened. Right. Shlomo Sand, the Israeli historian, went to Tel Aviv University to the big dais of all of the oldest Tommy Salmon's beard having rabbis up there and said, guys, would you show me the shelf about the Roman exile? I can't find it. And they were like, yeah, well, you know, the thing about that is that so we don't really have so much writing about that because it never happened.
Yeah.
The Romans never transferred the indigenous population out of there. It's a
Yeah.
myth. Like some of them left and went other
Some of
places,
them left. Yeah.
proselytized to people. And maybe some of them were kicked out, but that's who those people are. They just converted later to Christianity and then to Islam to save on taxes. There never was an ethnic cleansing of those people where they were replaced by Arabs from the Arabian Peninsula, right? They just intermarried and they took, it really was. Listen, you can either convert to Islam or you can pay higher tax rate. So people went, okay, fine, I'll convert to Islam then. And that's how it happens in a lot of places. And that was how it happened here. So yes, as you're saying, quite literally, if you believe that God said to Abraham, all this land belongs to you and your descendants, it's the Palestinians he was talking about, not some Russian or Lithuanian or Ukrainian who has the right by conversion, has some magical right to come and kick the people who are literally the descendants of those off of their land and take it from them. It's no less absurd than if the Italians of New Jersey invaded Sicily and started murdering everyone and saying, well, our ancestors are from here, so screw you. We get to murder you and steal your house and move into it.
Yeah.
It's completely ridiculous. I saw a funny skit like that where it was a lady kicking in a door in England and saying, this is my house. I'm moving in. You have to get out. And the guy's like, what are you talking about? I'm in England. You're Italian. Like, what is this? And she's like, yeah, but Rome used to rule this territory. And so therefore it belongs to me and you have to leave. And he's like, no, well, I'm not leaving. And so she shoots him in the stomach and he goes, and he falls on the ground. She goes, anti-Jupiterite. Come on, everybody. And then they all move into his house, you know?
All right, man. Well, plug what you got, Bubba.
All right, man. ScottHortonShow.com is my Substack. You can hear my interviews there, but you can also hear the audiobook of Provoked, the first 3 sections of it anyway, which is already like 10 hours or 12 hours worth just to get you through H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton.
That's a tiny book.
That's enough to get you started. And ScottHorton.org, I got all 6,000 interviews going back to 2003 there for you, of course. I'm the director of the Libertarian Institute, which is a whole bunch of really great authors and podcasters, including yourself. Thank you very much for your great association. And
Well, I appreciate you.
And then, of course, I'm the editorial director of antiwar.com, where Dave DeCamp and Eric Garris and Kyle Anzalone are holding it down, doing all the great work, making antiwar.com go for you. And then I have a brand new project I'm working on, the Scott Horton Academy of Foreign Policy and Freedom. This is my own Liberty classroom, as from the Tom Woods thing that he's setting up for me, and it's me doing gigantic courses on the Middle East and the Cold War with Russia, as well as James Bovard on 40 years of investigative journalism, Bupert on how America lost every war since 1945, Ramsey Baroud on Israel Palestine, and CJ Kilmer on how Woodrow Wilson is the worst person who ever lived. So it's going to be really great. And we hope to go live with the first of the courses sometime in August. And people can go to scotthortonacademy.com, enter your email address there, and you'll be the first to know when we're ready to go live.
And Provoked, the new podcast.
And I wrote some
Provoked.
books. Yeah, enough already about Afghanistan. Maybe you fought in Afghanistan and want to know about that one. I got an email like that from a guy the other day, even though that one sounds a little out of date now because we have left, but that's a pretty good history there, Fool's Air. And then I wrote Enough Already is about all the wars in the Middle East, and the latest is Provoked, how Washington started the new Cold War with Russia and the catastrophe in Ukraine. Oh, which reminds me of my brand new show is called Provoked.
There you go.
With
That's
Daryl
what I was going for.
The number one new podcast in America, 3 weeks running on Apple there.
Eat it, Joe Rogan.
Pretty good. Well, number one new podcast. I'm not saying we're ahead of Joe Rogan.
All right, Bubba, I'm going to stop the recording.